I'm going to tell you, the most indelible memory that I have of the Source is walking in and I'm hearing, because I would walk in and hear like Cool G rap, you heard BDP, you know what I'm saying, Rakim, but the shit that changed my life when I walked into the doors one day was y'all niggas was playing The Chronic.
Oh, that's
back to
back.
back to back. And I was like, and I gotta explain again, like internets, like the reason why I think personally Dr. Dre is the greatest hip hop producer of all times is because not only has he created great music and he has an extensive catalog, but he's changed the game over and over and over again. When you heard The Chronic, you were like, this is hip hop from Mars. This is some shit from a different dimension. Right?
Wow.
Well, because you have to also recognize that we were so East Coast.
Boom bap.
We were so boom bap.
Right.
That there was an arrogance around it.
Yes.
And you didn't see The Chronic coming.
No, nobody saw that shit. And the cover was whack. The album cover was whack.
I mean, this is what we know.
The album cover was whack. So I was like, what the fuck is this?
So the layers to shit, that's a whole nother thing, right? But musically,
yes,
sonically, it was like it was like Martians just had landed,
right?
It changed everything on a dime.
But yet, The Chronic did not get 5 mics. The Chronic got 4.5 mics.
It should have.
What was the argument behind that?
I don't remember.
Right.
It well
enough. Right.
I just don't.
I'm
trying to put myself in a room.
Different lifetimes ago.
I was going to say times ago, not time ago. Different lifetimes.
Lifetimes ago.
Multiple times ago.
Right.
Damn, I wish I remembered. I'm no dream will remember that.
Right.
I think I remember us recognizing that it was a 5 after the 4.5.
Right.
That's what I recall more. It's just this sense
there was like a oops.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
What were your best memories of the Source?
I guess the place and time.
Mm-hmm.
What Soho was, then know, Russell having Fat Farm on Prince Street, and, the fact that we felt like the sky was like we thought we owned the world.
We did own the world, Kierna, because on that little strip, on right, Soho and NoHo,
yes,
on that Broadway strip, we were connected to Run DMC,
yes,
Flavor Flav, Public Enemy, LL Cool J. You know what I'm saying? And then your place itself was a hub because as the Source is starting to gain, dominant, not even dominance, recognition.
Yeah.
Everyone didn't have to go to Def Jam. Everyone had to go to the Source.
Yes.
You motherfuckers were superstars.
Yes.
And
but the thing about being ahead of the curve, and this has followed me throughout my career, it's not always the sexiest place to be in the sense that the reward often comes after the fact. So those of you who are in front of the curve don't get what folks at the peak of the curve get.
Right.
So vibe comes. Vibe happens. Vibe can't happen without the Source having happened first.
The Source begat Vibe, but Vibe was so fly when it first came out.
Oh my God! That's the reward of the Source being so. We were grimy,
right?
Not just in the way, not just because hip hop was grimy. We were kind of grimy, and I don't mean this in a negative sense. I mean like we didn't have resources.
Right.
We didn't have the flashy, glossy. Funky,
black and white,
we didn't have
photos of
a
Tretch
lot
and Snoop,
what would befall Vibe just a few years after the advent of the Source.
Were you guys threatened by Vibe?
I would say.
Right.
I would say.
Right.
There was no way not to be. You have to remember the landscape. There's no other competition.
Right.
There's no complex. There's no no one else exists. So when someone else shows up and they're glossier, shinier, and reinterpreting what you just laid down over the last 4 or 5 years, it's like, oh. And then the other thing is that if I'm remembering correctly, in the very earliest Vibe conversations, they might have been conversations between the Source and that original group and Quincy and stuff.
Yeah, and then yes. Quincy was looking into putting the resources into the Source, got close enough.
Yeah.
Saw the special sauce.
Yes.
And then basically jacked the special sauce and took it to the Vibe.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and what Vibe did and what they represented and the time that they existed in, I'm talking about the Vibe heydays, needed to happen.
Right.
The Source needed to be kicked in the ass like that. The trajectory needed to continue on.
Mm-hmm.
Vibe, there needed to be a more polished, the world is changing too.
You have to pass on the baton.
And hip-hop is being commodified.
Yes.
So if we're going to be dancing and singing and selling chicken with the hip-hop, we also need to make sure that we're looking good in the pages and that things are getting polished up. Right. So this is all happening, and you know, a lot of people couldn't find their footing. I did, just by way of having left the Source by this point and things changing, and you know, defining myself, or having been defined all those years as a serious writer.
Right.
So Vibe is making a space for serious journalists as well.
Right.
So anyone who was a quote hip-hop journalist needed Vibe because you needed another outlet.
You know, this story has been told over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about the first, that fallout at the Source magazine. And how, when we were talking about this on air, one of the most painful things when you're a passionate person, when you're a creative person, when you're authentic and your dreams are pure, is when you land at some place that is your dream job. You know how hard it is to find a dream job, and then when the dream job becomes a nightmare.
Look.
You want some more Douce?
Jay, where you at? Listen, I remember when Ray would get buzzed into the Source.
Mm-hmm. What was your first impression of Ray Benzino?
No, you got to receive that statement because that's a symbolic thing. It
Buzz,
means that somebody had to approve him coming in.
Right.
So this whole narrative as Ray being the owner of the Source from its inception and the creator of the Source from its inception.
And you didn't know. Nobody knew.
It's mythology.
Right.
It is not the truth. Now, it was complicated, and this is from my vantage point. And I think if you talk to all of the early Source Mind Squad, you'll probably get a slightly different version of the truth from each of us.
Right.
Because some things were above ground, and some things were underground, and some things were unspoken, and some things were spoken. So you just had to piece it all together for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I distinctly remember a time that Ray did not have, I certainly didn't think of him as my boss.
Right.
At all.
Right.
At all.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't lost on me that the relationship between Ray and Dave was very complicated.
Right.
And that began to reveal itself in different ways.
What were the first signs? To you? Was it the conversation? Was it the water cooler conversations, or?
It was more like Dave being like, "Who's that? Is that Ray?"
No.
It was more like that.
Right.
Like when he shows up.
Right.
And then it was him being there more, and then
did it feel right that he was there more?
It didn't feel wrong.
Right.
It may not have felt right.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
You didn't recognize.
I didn't see anything necessarily monumental coming out of it.
Right.
I just kind of recognized that whole crew, Almighty RSO, the whole Boston Massive, and you know, the Harvard kids are out of Boston throughout their college. If you guys know the history of the Source and Dave Mays and the radio show and all the things that beget the earliest Source, which was a newsletter, as you had mentioned earlier, you know that this is very much tied to the Almighty RSO and like some Boston kind of underworld, hip-hop underworld.
Gangster shit, right?
Gangster shit, exactly. But I I wasn't paying attention.
Right, because it was your dream job.
Yes, exactly, and I'm at my dream job. So, what can I say about Ray and that time? Just that it just didn't seem monumental. I didn't see what happened coming.
Right.
And then I left the Source I just kind of broke out. My life changed. I did some crazy stuff on the side myself.
What the fuck you did?
I married a stranger.
Okay.
And who convinced me that I didn't have a quote real job. And
really?
Yeah. A whole nother job.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not that I'm not shy about it. Well, I'm becoming less shy about it. But just interesting how it unfolded. So I leave the Source, but ironically, at a time that Mays and I probably are closer than we've ever been, which is also the time that Mays and the rest of the team are as fractured as they've ever been. Right. But because I have some distance, I'm literally in Detroit, I'm not dealing with the kind of visceral impact that his violation meant to editorial.
Right. And basically what Kierna is talking about is you know, in the world of publishing, there's an unwritten rule that there's just like there's a, you know, supposedly supposed to be a separation between state and church. Mm-hmm. In publishing, there's supposed to be a separation between editorial and publisher. Mm-hmm. And that relationship was breached because as the owner slash publisher slash rapper, Benzino went against that grain and forced editorial content to praise his rap.
Well, Dave would always overstate the quality of Benzino's music. Mm-hmm. That we knew. It was like, Dave's boy.
Right.
You know, and it was just, yeah, but no. Like, right. You know, we'd all be like, yeah, but not really though. You know, so there was always that. But he forced it. And remember, so now when before the source has its fall, right. It's at a mega height.
It's at its peak.
It's at its peak.
Right.
And these are the Benzino years. Mm-hmm. These are the Benzino years. And these are the years that it's getting really murky what the relationship is. And the narrative is beginning to change, and Ray's importance is starting to feel like, oh, so we're supposed to be paying attention, right? So he's calling shots somewhere. And
there's some intended danger going on right now.
Yeah, and so there's that. Yeah, forget about the whole evolution of that.
Right. Violence is introduced,
and violence also not just in this story.
Right.
Violence, the threat of violence becomes more and more real as the source is reaching its peak, because covering rap artists at that time meant, if with any level of authenticity, meant sometimes presenting a critique that they weren't used to.
Right.
I think that
being critical.